And we're live. Hi, everyone. Number one Marmaduke fan here. And today I am joined by Chibi Mike, the co-creator of Samurai and Dinosaurs. Say hi, Mike.
Hmm. Hi everyone, how you doing?
So there are 2 days left to support Samurai and Dinosaurs on Indiegogo. And tell us a little bit about the artist and tell us a little bit about this project, Chibi.
Yeah, you got it. The artist is Sergio Calvé. He's a European cartoonist. He's based out of Spain. We've known each other almost 15, 20 years at this point. And this is a project that we put together as a submission a few years ago. And when we made the rounds with the usual suspects and they all turned us down, we just kind of put it in a drawer, so to speak. And like when my wife and I, who runs the studio with me, when we decided to make another go at being a full-on studio, we decided that this would be the best book to start with because it's always been really close to all of our hearts. As far as an elevator pitch goes, Samurai and Dinosaurs is a revenge fueled action adventure story that focuses on an elite group of samurai, and they're just dispatched to investigate a downed meteorite on the countryside of a large feudal Japanese city. There have been rumors of monsters kind of terrorizing the countryside, so they're sent in to figure out just what's going on. And along their journey, time begins to break down and fracture all around them. And what they discover is a hole in time with dinosaurs bleeding out from the Jurassic era into feudal Japan.
And something interesting about this project is Calvé's kind of European-esque art style. It's unique. It's not like any single European artist I've seen before. Tell us a little bit about how you got in touch with Calvé.
Yeah, sure. So we originally met back in the when Mark Miller first launched his website, which just tells you how long ago this was.
Wow.
Yeah. So he had a forum set up to go with the website, and that's where we met originally, and we always kept in touch, and we shared similar interests, and it was that thing of like he's done work for a bunch of European publishers, and on occasion he's even done work for like Marvel's UK branch. So I always just assumed he was kind of out of my league, so to speak. And yeah, like one day we were just talking about superhero stuff, and we started working on a superhero book. And from there, eventually, we got to Samurai and Dinosaurs once, Selena and I had the basic pitch for it and thought that maybe if he kind of subdued a few things about his work, he would be a great fit for it.
So would you say maybe he was a bit more of an expressive or looser artist when you first met him?
Yeah, and he still is like and he hates when I say this, but I mean it with nothing but love. His I always describe his work as kind of like European Kirby.
Huh.
Like he loves superheroes, and he loves doing these like big over exaggerated shots, and his work is normally bright and dynamic, and neon and colorful. And I don't know what it was about Samurai and Dinosaurs, but just like the idea of him kind of subduing that, and studying from the greats like Lone Wolf and Cub and Usagi Yojimbo. I really thought he would be a good fit for the book.
So Usagi Yojimbo kind of came to my mind the very first time I saw it because you've got a not exactly it's not like a manga style, but it's still very rooted in Japanese storytelling.
Yeah.
Uh, and some of that may come from Kurosawa, right? Because Kurosawa thought about visual storytelling so much. Like, do you talk with Calvé about the visual side of things?
Yeah, 100%. As a matter of fact, when we first started discussing this, and back when we ran the first campaign for it, the way I would describe it, especially to film buffs, is it's kind of Kurosawa by way of Ray Harryhausen, who, for anyone who doesn't know, is the godfather of special effects and stop motion.
And it's almost as if kind of like, what if Harryhausen and Kurosawa had come together for a dream project, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That was always like what I envisioned in my head with the book.
Tell me a little bit more about the Mark Miller connection. So you found each other through Mark Miller's website. Were you just on forums talking about Mark Miller's comics?
Yeah, it started, I mean, in the early 2000s, like if we're talking like web 2.0 stuff, the early 2000s was a crazy time for comic fans. Like, Warren Ellis had his own board. Bendis had his board, which ran all the way up until a few years ago,
Wow.
and Mark Miller had his own board, which I think is still going, but is obviously completely different from what it was when I first got on there. Um, yeah, like I was a big fan of the Authority, and I liked what he was doing with the Ultimates. So, I was in college and I had a library job, so it was a lot of sitting around doing nothing, to
Wow.
be honest. So, I just on a whim decided to sign up, and sure, there were people that just wanted to try to get in touch with Mark, or like complain about whatever he was doing at Marvel, but there was also a huge group of just really creative writers, artists, editors who kind of like what Ellis was fostering on his board. They just kind of wanted a place to like congregate.
Yeah. Uh, so I know that you met Calvé through this board, and I you mentioned he's kind of like a European Kirby. Talk a little bit about the process of how you two work together to create this project. How long is it? How long is the? What's interesting about this is the art is completely finished and it's kind of ready to go once it gets funded. Tell us a little bit about the process of how the comic came to be finished. Like how long did that take?
Overall, and this is maybe about 4 or 5 years ago now. Overall, it took about a year to put together. It took me about 3 months to get the script into a place where I was happy with it. It was kind of the only time that I kind of took the Neil Gaiman approach to script writing, where I just kind of let the story and the characters unfold as they wanted to unfold. Um, and luckily it got to a place where I was like, oh well, that makes sense. And if this happens because of that, then what happened earlier means this. And with like a couple extra punch ups and like maybe 1 or 1.5 extra passes on it, I was happy with it, and handed it off to Sergio. And uh, Sergio Sergio is never not busy,
Wow.
but he's also extremely fast.
Yeah.
So I think at the time that I gave it to him, he was working on two other projects and this, and he still managed to get it done in about 4 months. And it's 100 pages worth of content, so that's ridiculous.
And one of the characters is actually his contribution to the work, right? The samurai the samurai dinosaur.
The Tetsubun Dorgan.
That's it.
He's a soldier who's crafted a mech suit for himself, and it's built out of steel and iron and bamboo, and it's steam powered.
Uh, and has he had a long-standing interest in mechas, Calvé?
I mean, not per se. Like it, when we agreed that it wasn't going to be 100% historically accurate, that was just one of those things of like, wouldn't it be cool if? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, we're already punching a hole in time and having dinosaurs spill out. Like, I don't think a guy walking around in a dragon suit is going to be the least believable part of this.
Oh, I'm looking at the chat, and we've got the metal comic artist here. We got Lyle Convoy reviews from the Thundercast, and we've got Gus Tyler Bush here in Carl's Amateur Hour. Lyle Convoy reviews says, draw Gal Gai Gar, which I've heard him mention before, but I've never drawn that before. So here we go. That's our first request for the draw stream tonight.
All right. And
Have you ever heard it? Have you
that's
ever
a
heard of
great run, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm planning, like, if I get through all our requests, I'll just keep going through like all the samurai from the project.
Awesome, awesome, man.
Uh, so you've got you have about 1,800 to go on your Indiegogo, and is it 72 hours left for the project?
At this point, we're down to about 60, but yeah, like early today slash, late last night, we had a huge bump. So we went from kind of being a little bit nervous to, okay, this is doable if like I really work hard and promote it.
You also did. You also unveiled a $500 tier, which I think is kind of interesting. Tell people what one lucky person can get if they go in at the $500 tier.
Yeah, totally. So, we have well, it started with six, but someone bought one of them. We had six tiers specifically of like the original pages from the book and the swag bag tier, which is the book and the poster and a whole bunch of stuff. And so Sergio is mailing those six original pages to me from Spain. And he wrote to me yesterday and, sent me the confirmation number. But he also said, hey, I also included the 8 character pinups as well. So do with those whatever you want. And that really surprised me. And, I thought on it for a good couple hours because I knew whatever I did with that, it had to be kind of bigger than just, the individual pages for sale.
Yeah.
So yeah, I figured, well, if we're down to 1,800 and we could take 500 of that right off the table, and someone was interested in having, 8 original pieces from Sergio, like why not?
You also have some tiers where people can get an original page of art, and I actually upped my contribution. I think I jumped in at like 20 at first, and I think I upped it to the $50 one to get the prequel. So I actually haven't heard anything about the prequel comic yet. Can you tell us a little bit about what might be in the prequel and why it might be worth getting at least that tier?
Yeah, sure. So when we did this the first time, I took about 3 weeks between relaunching and talked to as many of our backers as I could. And the one thing that most people agreed on was they wanted it, it was kind of the meme thing of like shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
They wanted more than just the book. And I was trying to be conservative by pretty much just having the book up for sale. I was like, well, we're new to the scene, we're kind of building an audience, so let's start small. And no, like most people were like, hey, if you've got original art, if you've got other ideas for, perks and rewards, like, toss those in there. So um in the main story, there's a part towards the middle where our group of samurai are making their way through a dead forest that's been affected by the blast radius of the meteorite. And they come across an old, decrepit cabin, kind of, in the style of like Evil Dead. And um, they take shelter in there, and it's clear that there is some like weird, messed up stuff that has happened in the cabin, but Sergio and I didn't want to slow down the pacing too much, so I just kind of I made a single point in the cabin and kind of let that, just let readers run with their imagination. And so when I was thinking of stuff that we could do to expand on the campaign, like I went back to the cabin and I'm like, well, so if Sergio's too busy to contribute any new work directly, like I could tell like a short story just based on the cabin. And so yeah, like I'm going to be writing and drawing a 16-page Ashcan prequel called The Cabin.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about your kind of like artistic journey. I'm guessing you were interested in Mark Miller, because you've had a longstanding interest in comics and probably in making your own comics. So tell us a little bit about, what's it like for you when you make art?
Sure. Well, I my day job is I work as a freelance writer illustrator, primarily outside of comics. It didn't start that way. My wife and I moved out here to the West Coast fully intending to make comics full time. And, that's when the reality of the industry kind of
Yeah.
set in for us. So, um, yeah, my history with art and comics extends pretty much all the way, back to like, the beginning. Comics have always been a part of my life, and the first thing I drew was, Superman on a chalkboard that my mom had got me. Yeah, and it was just, a smiley face and an S, and like, like twigs were coming out of the S for the arms and legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, like when, and I was just telling this story yesterday. When Batman the Animated Series premiered, like that was one of those like revelatory moments of like, well, obviously I'm doing this with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So my work, although it doesn't always reflect it, my work is deeply inspired by Bruce Timm, Darwin Cook, Tim Sale, people in that vein, so to speak.
Good inspiration
Y-
sources.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So
Um,
kind of
go ahead.
like Western superheroes kind of in your childhood, and then when did you start to maybe kind of like add in like the Kurosawa, and do you have any interest in like manga? I'm guessing.
A little bit. I'm really picky with both manga and anime. I'm really picky. Um, so in terms of like breaking out of superhero comics, Preacher Preacher was another revelatory moment of like, oh, that's what comics could be. So that sent me on one path, and then at the same time, around the time that I became a teenager, I started to become a film buff. So my taste started branching out from there even more, and now, as an adult, I'm all over the place. Like I'm at the point where like I'm so invested in craft and storytelling
Yeah.
that like genre pretty much doesn't matter to me. Like I enjoy a bit of everything.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to be because then you start seeing like consistent things across different styles of storytelling, and you don't just see like you don't see every Western cliche. You see what works in the best Western stories, and you can kind of like that. I think that's where mashups come in. Like Samurai and Dinosaurs is a mashup, right? That's just one of those great like high concept. What if these two cool things fought each other? But you also have appreciation, and you have this Kurosawa appreciation, which is kind of what communicates to me like why you want to tell a story like this. Is you have appreciation for two different types of genres, and you can kind of see how they work together.
Totally, yeah. And we might have even been talking about this last time around. Like I had this moment where I realized that a lot of my career is built around genre mashup.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and I think I figured out where that stems from. I think it comes from uh, going to see Dusk Till Dawn in the theater. Like that was a moment where like I was just getting into crime movies, and I had loved horror movies since I was about 12 or 13, and here was this thing that like perfectly distilled both of them down into one thing that shouldn't work but worked almost perfectly. And so yeah, like there's so many stories that I've developed and am developing that just kind of fall into two different categories at the same time. um yeah, like Samurai and Dinosaurs, and our next project, which is going to be called The Gods Fear Me. um that's pretty much Lovecraft by way of sci-fi. So yeah, I guess I'm a big fan of genre mashup.
I think you mentioned the Gods Fear Me on your last time on here. Yeah, could remind me what we talked about the Gods Fear Me last time you were on, because I remember that you mentioned some Lovecraft influence. What was that going to be mashed up with again?
Like it's going to be a heavy sci-fi influence. Basically what happened is I was watching Prometheus, a few years ago, and I kind of didn't like it, but at the same time, like my brain started picking up on these cool elements that really did work within the film.
Yeah,
And basically, by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, well, okay, everybody likes, you know, Michael Fassbender as David the android, and this whole thing with this like prehistoric primordial face hugger giant monster thing is amazing. So why isn't this whole movie just this android fighting giant things like that? And
Yeah,
you know, from there, like the story just kind of started spilling out of my head.
nice. I like that because it makes every movie like potentially useful, even if the movie sucks, because you can at least try to think about, well, what could I make work from the movie? What's like the best 10 minutes of it, and why would that be a better movie, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Trying to think. Last time you were on, I think we talked about all like of the seven samurai who are in Samurai and Dinosaurs, and I know this might just be interesting, kind of like as a behind the scenes thing, but I noticed you kind of like changed up some of the featured art you did for the new Kickstarter. We should mention that, by the way. If someone backed the first Samurai and Dinosaurs campaign, we're talking about the new campaign. So even if you thought you backed it before, you should go check out the link in the description and back the new one. But I noticed that you kind of like picked some different preview art for the new edition. Were you trying to maybe like keep some more surprises, or did you just want to like highlight something different about the book this time?
Yeah, that came from listening to the audience, or our backers. One of the other things that they mentioned was you know, they liked the art for the pages that I chose, but my thinking was, well, I just want to show you a bunch of cool stuff and kind of like, you know, quick cuts in a movie trailer, like what this story could be. And they just wanted to know what's the tone, what's the pacing, you know, what's the feel of the story. And so, you know, once I had that in mind, I'm like, okay, well, I looked back over the whole thing, and really the first 11 or 12 pages of the story get across the revenge narrative. They get across the level of violence and language, and they get across the pacing in that it's kind of cutting back and forth between flashbacks and present day.
Yeah, I like that because it kind of like gives me a chance to sort of settle into maybe like a feel for how you pace a story. So like I see I love Samurai Jack so much. I draw connections with it a lot. But Calvé has kind of like this sort of geometric style that's perfect for these kind of like cool cartoony samurai. And I also kind of noticed that you do some like nice buildup of like it looked like the servant was kind of like hesitant, not sure if he should knock on the door or not. And then he finally knocks on the door, and then all hell breaks loose. So it's a neat promise of things to come.
Right.
Have you guys thought about? I know you mentioned the gods fear me. Have you ever considered doing anything else in the Samurai and Dinosaurs universe?
Yeah. I, you know, like I always make it clear to backers and potential backers, like this isn't going to be a to be continued dot 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 question mark thing. The graphic novel is very much a standalone experience. It was designed that way, and never at any point during production or even remastering it now for Indiegogo did either of us think about uh, adding anything in that could be, you know, teased out for sequel bait. But you know, over the past couple months, you know, dealing with this book after, you know, a couple years, ideas did start to drift into my head a little bit, and there's kind of a very, very rough roadmap for three potential sequels. The first would be called Ijime, which is Japanese for bully or mean person. The second would be Detectives and Dinosaurs, and the third would be Astronauts and Dinosaurs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Uh, you mentioned that you and your wife moved to the West to try to break into the comics industry, and I think I've noticed her on Twitter. Tell us a little bit about your better half and how she contributes to the team.
Yeah, no problem. So Selena, you know, just like me, she's a She's a freelance illustrator, and she, has like a large array of like private clients, both through Patreon and just other outlets. Um, we do a book once a year for Free Comic Book Day called for hire. And we go all around the city. We do like 2 to 3 shops a year for like 3 hours each, and just do as many sketches and stuff as we can for kids. So that's always a good time. And Selena's style is heavily influenced by both manga, anime, and the classic Archie look. Those
Interesting.
are, yeah, that's kind of her bread and butter.
And did she also like? So tell me about when the two of you work together. Do you both produce the Free Comic Book Day book as a duo?
Yeah, we do. I handle the script, and she handles all the art.
Okay.
And we usually write it kind of Marvel style. We'll go back and forth over the plot. I'll hand her a very loose outline, and then she'll hand me back pages. And I'll from there I'll go back in and dialogue over what she's drawn.
Have you ever considered commissioning her to do some Samurai and Dinosaurs pinups or posters or anything like that?
Oh yeah, 100%. So if we're lucky enough to get into stretch goal territory, the one that I'm really pushing for is the $12,000 level, where I'll have a gallery filled with about, at this point, it's looking to be around 10 or 12 different artists, and Selena's definitely going to be one of them.
Who are some? Can you tease a? Can you reveal any of the other artists you've tapped their shoulder to do pinup art for you?
Oh yeah, yeah. We have it listed in the tier section. There's Kyung Lee of Battle Maiden Knuckle Bomb fame.
Nice.
Narwhal from Earthbound. And who else? Carl O'Roe. If you've seen Deathsworn.
I haven't seen Deathsworn yet.
Oh, he's an amazing artist. He's based in Ireland, I believe, and yeah, he just self-publishes this sci-fi Conan-esque, heavy metal-esque, action adventure book that looks amazing.
So, have you met all these people just through the internet?
Yeah, just through the internet, through Twitter, through what the indie scene and Comicsgate has grown into. Yeah, and it's mostly been over the past like 4 or 5 months.
It's amazing additions you can make. I think John Malin supported this project too, right?
Yeah. John Malin's been huge. He's been so helpful. Both him and Edwin Boyette. They've been incredibly patient, and they helped shape some things up here and there about the campaign. They're great guys.
Tell people a little bit about working with indie crime, maybe for people who are thinking about doing their own indie projects. Like, did you call them or they call you?
I reached out to them. They're pretty open. They say, like, if you have a project, just drop us a line, tell us about it, and we'll help get you up and running. And now Edwin and what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? The guy from Cautionary Comics.
Oh shoot. Yeah, I only know him as Cautionary Comics, though.
Right. Ben Henderson.
Okay.
Or yeah. So the two of them are starting up Indie Focused, which is going to be an offshoot of IndieCron, and it's going to be like a resource center for all creative types, including comic people.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't know. I really dig everything that they're doing, and yeah, I couldn't be more grateful for their help and support.
I'm really kind of interested in maybe your journey as a writer. What have you learned, or how have you grown as you've done projects both for Free Comic Book Day and with Calvé?
Sure. Well, when I started up in art school in Chicago, like my intention was 100% to just be a comic artist. And while I was in college, I started up a small company with a handful of friends that went there with me, and our intention was to create an anthology book, and it was that thing of like it quickly became apparent that kind of like being the bass player in a band, like someone has to be the writer.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of took that on, and what I discovered is like I kind of enjoy writing more than I do art.
Huh.
Due in part to the fact that I'm really slow as an artist, which is part of why like I had to move away from comic art.
Huh.
Yeah, like if I'm doing a project, if I'm doing an illustration for my day job, like that's pretty much where all my effort goes, and
Yeah.
I don't have time to then like sit down and bust out like 2 pages of sequential art.
Yeah. It's a slow storytelling process, definitely.
Yeah, so like I mean that helped, and plus two, I found especially in comics, writing is closer to um I mean artists will say that they're the director,
Hmm.
but I think of artists more in terms of the cinematographer.
Okay.
Um,
But
I mean, like I can see their point, but to me, the writer is the guy saying, "I want this shot to look like this. How would you make it happen?"
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Yeah, especially if it's a collaborative role. Like some writers I know, they just like say, "Do this." Batman punches the guy, and then the artist figures it out. But for maybe for a more involved writer, you are kind of like guiding or like helping point the right in the direction you want to go. I was kind of interested. The Death Note team,
Mhm.
the writer just does little doodles, right? So he'll do little doodles to kind of explain the basic action, and then that's the basis of for everything that the artist half of the team then works on. So uh, you ever work that way? Do like a few little thumbnails or something to explain an idea as you're kind of like in the planning phase?
Yeah, yeah. Like I usually try to reserve that, like if I'm working with an artist in person. Like there have been a few artists over the years who, whether it be in Chicago or here in Portland, there have been a few that we've worked with in house, so to speak. And if there's something I'm trying to get across that's just not going via communication, I'll bust out like a scratch pad and just jot down like little rough thumbnail
Yeah,
breakdowns. Yeah, but like each project for me tends to be its own thing. For the most part, I prefer writing in full script, but if I'm working with an artist, is especially like a Sergio, where like we've known each other for so long and we've developed this shorthand. Um, like there have been some things that I've written for Sergio where I'll just, it's almost that Marvel style thing of like, here's a paragraph describing what the page is, like just run with it because
yeah.
I know you know what I'm looking for.
That's lovely. And what's interesting about this project for me is the chance to get to support Sergio. Like you mentioned, you meet him on uh, an internet forum. He does work for Marvel Comics in Europe. Like without the internet, like how would I have ever known about like Sergio's style, right? So it's had this like flattening effect where we get this chance to support all of these new artists and be introduced to all these new styles. So
Yeah, yeah, and like it was crazy for me because, like I said, even like 15 years ago, like Sergio had already been doing this for like 5, 6, 7 years, and just I had no idea that he existed.
wow. This might be another like question that's of use to people who are like interested in doing their own projects. What's
Sure.
been the interview side of things like you're obviously like chatting with me. We chatted before. You've been. I think I saw you wrote a tweet that said you're going to be going nonstop until the campaign ends. So tell us a little bit about like how tough it is to like network and like get people talking about your book and so like some of what you do. Like who are some people you've been talking to about the project?
Sure. Well, talked with Malin twice over. I've talked with Professor Geek. I've talked with Clint over at Sweetcast. I've been on with Ethan Van Sciver
Nice.
a handful of times. It's each each person is kind of their own thing, and each show that they do is very much its own beast. You know, for starters, just in terms of like getting attention, all you can really do is kind of dive into the deep end, which I know for certain creative types can be daunting.
Yeah.
Like I know so many people are just used to, you know, sitting in their room or their office or whatever and just, you know, plugging away at their art or their writing. But you know, it's that thing of if you're going to put a project up and you're going to ask people for money for it, you have to be able to sell it. And you know, like you're going to be terrible at it at first, just like with anything that you're doing for the first time. But eventually, like, you figure out a way to just accept what it is, and you know, you get to a place where you're comfortable just treating it like any other conversation you would have in real life.
Yeah. So you kind of have to get over your shyness a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, you know, when I was in high school and like the first year of college, I was in a band for like about 4 years, so that like stage fright, afraid of like presenting myself to people thing, you know, I kind of got that beaten out of me at like a young age.
Yeah. Ha.
Uh, but yeah, like, you know, like it does come back a little bit, especially when you spend like 16 hours a day just, you know, sitting at a desk in your room.
Right. Uh,
Uh, and yeah, like from there, like once you actually start networking and reaching out to people on Twitter, once you have their attention, like if you haven't actually listened to their shows, you should probably do your research and
right.
check out one or two. Because the worst thing is when you hear someone who like for example, in terms of juxtaposition, I've heard people go on certain shows and treat it like it's Ethan's show, which has a very like wrestling slash Howard Stern, like there's a rawness to it.
Yeah.
I've heard them treat it like that, whereas like, you know, Professor Geek's show is kind of
Calmer.
laid back and softer and more intellectual in a way without, you know, meaning just sound insulting.
Right.
Yeah, so like you got to know what you're doing.
How much time do you spend just kind of like researching, comics YouTube and comics Twitter just to get a feel for the lay of the land? Because I imagine that could become like a black hole if you're just like spending all your time like checking out like this channel. It also help you find a few leads. So if you hear that, you just kind of like do it naturally while following other projects.
Yeah, I mean, uh when people when people like, you know, Richard from Diversity in Comics first started getting big, and you know, the whole scene kind of exploded, um just just for the sake of my day job and, you know, knowing the people that I know here in Portland, like it was that thing of you kind of had to keep up with it.
Yeah.
But there definitely came a point where I was like, okay, like I really am gonna have to start treating this like a job, and I'm gonna have to take the weekends off. Unless it's something like a situation like this where like I have to actively promote something.
Mhm.
I try not to let work, you know, come home with me over the weekends.
Okay. So you like to have you still like to have like a bit of a separation between the you just time at home. That makes sense. Like so you don't have burnout. Uh, that happens to a lot of like manga artists. They'll just like work these 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks, and then they'll end up getting like heart conditions from overworking
Right.
themselves.
Right. Yeah. And you don't want to be that guy that like goes to a dinner party or whatever, and everyone's just making polite small talk, and you're like, "Can you believe what Gail Simone said?"
Right,
Like no one cares.
right. Normies don't care about the details of comics. They might care about your comic. They might want to read
Right.
about some samurai fighting dinosaurs, but they don't care about who hates who in
Right.
the comics internet.
Yeah, so like at a certain point you just kind of you have to do the whole thing of like, all right, I'm gonna put on a suit, I'm gonna be an adult.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
I'm a bit interested in your work as an illustrator. So, like for some artists that might sound like a dream job. Like I've worked in graphic design, and I kind of just ended up looking at it like, it's a job. It's like, it's nice that I get to use my skills, but it's kind of like it's a job like any other job. What have
Mhm.
you learned doing professional illustration work? Has that helped you think about become a better comics person?
Well, the one thing that it's definitely done is it it helped me realize that and again, this all kind of started happening around the time that the whole diversity thing started blowing up. My work in illustration made me realize that for as much as people in the mainstream American comic industry like to talk about how far things have come in terms of like creator rights and like royalties and all that stuff,
Hmm.
we I think a lot of that is just lip service because a lot of the wages that are being offered in comics are living wages.
Right.
And yeah, like like one of my jobs last year was writing video game scenarios for a Chinese game publisher. And to go from the figures that they were presenting me to a meeting that I had at IDW where the first words out of the guy's mouth was, "None of us are doing this to get rich."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, okay. So my work in both illustration and writing has definitely taught me to be more on my guard in the world of comics.
Uh, what would you advise to a young artist then, who's maybe kind of looking at the comic scene, thinking about, maybe like they're drawing some characters or thinking of some ideas? What would you advise them? If you could go back in time and be young again?
Sure, sure. Um, well, just in terms of fundamentals, and I was saying this earlier this morning. In terms of fundamentals, I know everyone just wants to draw the fun stuff. You just want to draw people punching each other up in the air. Um, but you have to know your anatomy.
Yeah.
You have to know perspective. And you have to be able to draw buildings, cups, chairs, beds, cars, like all the boring stuff that is just kind of background to that cool stuff. You have to be able to render it realistically, otherwise the fun stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah. Beyond just its, obviously you're going to have to draw it because those are parts of daily life, but it also adds flavor to the world, right? Like that can be like the way you draw like a mundane object can really affect the tone of everything else in the story.
Mhm. So yeah, that's right off the bat. And then in terms of building a career, what's important is don't understand your worth. Understand that if you're completely new to the scene, unless you're like the best artist that's ever lived, you're not going to be earning like top tier rates. But at the same time, don't if you're worth it, don't settle for less than a living wage.
Yep.
Um, the best thing that I can suggest is try your best to find an artist that or a writer that kind of speaks to where you're at creatively, and start building up a presence on Twitter and Indiegogo. And once you have something of an audience built up, just dive into the crowdfunding scene. um, if your work is good and engaging, you'll find an audience. It might take you like 4 or 5, maybe even 10 years, but it just comes down to what level of investment are you willing to make.
Yeah. Looking at the chat, I think I see something that might be a request. So if you want to do a drawing request tonight, make sure you share the Indiegogo campaign for Samurai and Dinosaurs, and then just write a comment and at me and 01 Marmaduke fan if you shared the campaign, and I'll do a drawing for you guys tonight. I think I'll pull up another one of the samurai from the project. Uh, let's see here. think I'll draw the. I think someone joked that one of these guys looks a bit like Keanu Reeves, so I think I'll draw the Keanu Reeves samurai.
Yeah, yeah, I've been getting that a lot. Kaigara, who's kind of the wild card of the group,
Yeah.
he was he was meant to be sort of our Wolverine, and I don't know, like the way Sergio renders him, everyone just says, "Oh, it's Keanu Reeves."
I'm gonna draw like a super close up so I can get like a good scowl on there.
Sure.
Uh, you don't have to talk about the characters in specifically, but I recall that you mentioned that each of them does kind of have like their own personality or their own contribution to the team. Talk a little bit about like team building. How do you balance a team and make sure that each person is useless? How do you avoid like a Mary Sue problem?
Right. Um, the, I mean, what helps is, and this comes back to the whole thing of just being into a bit of everything. Um, what helps is, be it in video games or pen and paper, if you have some type of interest in like a role playing setting.
Mm-hmm.
Because what role playing teaches you, besides getting out of your skin and learning what does and doesn't work for a character's personality, besides that, what role playing does is it teaches you team building. It teaches you can't just have four tanks in the group. You can't have four, magic users. Um, Everyone has to have their own role. Otherwise, when anything besides what you're all good at comes up, you're all going to get smoked. And it's kind of the same way in storytelling. Like, you have to sit down, and normally how I work is I come up with the scenario. I'm like, again, the Prometheus thing. Like, wouldn't it be cool if? And then from there, like, I start doing world building, and once the world is set up in place, I'm like, okay, like, if it's a group dynamic, I'm like, how many people, and what would they have to specialize in to be able to survive in this world and everything that I have planned plot wise.
Now that might be interesting. So I mean, you have to think a little bit about like the strategy of how would samurais actually get down to fighting like dinosaurs? Like, why wouldn't the dinosaurs just rip them up? Do you look at any like war strategy stuff or things like that, military history to get ideas for those kinds of things?
Yeah, and like, we couldn't, like, I knew that we weren't going to be able to go too crazy with the dinosaurs, in terms of like the amount that the group would encounter, the size and toughness and thickness of the dinosaurs. um like,
Mhm.
that's part of why, like, there's a great brontosaurus scene, but it's not like they have to deal with a brontosaurus stampede like in Jackson's King Kong remake. Because it's like,
Right,
well, they'd all be dead. um
right.
but yeah, like, you know uh knowing that we had to have a T-Rex in the book, that was definitely an instance of like, okay, now Sergio's need to have a guy walking around in dragon mech armor now, that doesn't just look cool, but it actually serves like a functional purpose.
Yeah. I like that because then kind of like strategy is what makes fighting interesting. I think like beyond just like giant guys smacking into each other in midair. Like the strategy is then where kind of like there you get to show the characters' intelligence. Do you ever think maybe like about the emotion of the characters and why they're fighting as that connects to the fighting scene? Like characters who are maybe more motivated by rage or characters who are a bit more noble. Does that ever show up in their fighting style?
Yeah, actually, that's kind of why the flashback sequences were built into the story. Like, there's one samurai who's more traditionally, like, he sees himself like an artist or a performance artist, and his sword fighting technique and his stances are all built around like, you know uh painting gestures and stuff like that. um and yeah, like, the flashbacks allow you to go like, okay, why is Ren the de facto leader? Why is he so filled with rage? And how could that affect the narrative? And why is the wild card of the group the wild card? Like, what is it about him that makes him more than just like a Wolverine knockoff? Like,
Yeah.
what's his story, and how would that actually play out in a time period like feudal Japan?
So you may start with an inspiration like Wolverine Samurai, right? But you can't just end it there. Then you have to start thinking about maybe specifics of the character, and that's maybe where they start to become less of a version of another character and they become their own character, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, and it's nothing too spoilery, but with Kaigara specifically, especially because you're drawing him, um, during the course of the writing, um, I kept the characters kept referring to him as being possessed by a demon, and by the time we got to his flashback, I'm like, well, this has to be the moment in his life where that became his identity. This kind of demon possessed wild card. And yeah, like, that flashback is where he became not just the wild card of the team, but Kaigara.
I love that. I'm really looking forward to it. Uh, Let me think. You offered a digital version of the book, right? As one of the perks.
Yeah, $8 for a digital copy.
Okay. So that's a good like jumping on point. Like one thing I appreciate is sometimes it can be hard for poor kids or whatever, or people between jobs to jump on some of these projects. So you did kind of consider like budgets a bit. Like there's like the really nice tier, the $500 tier for people who want some like really nice original art, and like the $50 tier was perfect for me. Oh yeah, I forgot. People can get their name in the book, right? If they do the $50 tier, is that right?
Well, actually, yeah, like, that goes back to the whole budgeting thing. Not a lot, but there were a handful of people that were like, "Hey, I'd like to be able to help out in some way, but I can't really, donate anything big right now." So we have a $2 tier that's just, "Hey, if you want to toss $2 our way, we'll include your name in the thank you page."
Yeah.
So everyone from the $2 level up will get their name in on that page.
Well, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
really nice because you're showing appreciation to everybody that way.
Yeah, and also, I should have made this clear in the campaign, but if we reach funding, I'll reach out to everyone and let them know. So regarding the thank you page, I'm going to reach out to each individual backer and clear how they want their name presented, because I know anonymity and that stuff is
Yeah,
important to certain people.
that's good. Cough, number one Marmaduke fan. Cough, cough. Yeah.
Right. So
uh,
yeah, don't worry. I'm not just gonna blast everyone's names up on a page in a book.
Here you go. Other Ren, not the cool samurai Ren.
Right. No, believe me, she's no fan of ours.
Let's not talk about her. I mean, she's banned. Yeah. She's not on Twitter anymore. We don't have to talk about her if we don't want to.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe like not to talk about rent, but how do you navigate maybe like professional problems? Like how do you navigate like someone getting in your face or someone getting I don't know angry at you because you use the Comicsgate hashtag? Like, do you have like a no drama perspective, or do you try to interact with people who are coming after you for those kinds of things?
Oh man, this is a deep rabbit hole. Okay. Yes, like, to begin, we have a very strict no drama policy.
Good.
In the case of that person that we just mentioned, the second that we got wind that she was snooping around us, like, both of us immediately blocked her.
Mm-hmm.
So we avoid it whenever possible. However, it did, like, coming out as officially supporting Comicsgate did end up costing us both professionally and personally.
Wow.
Selena, and what's interesting is Selena's been getting it worse than me. Like, I was expecting to take the brunt of it, And I mean, without getting into too much of the political stuff, like for certain reasons, I think because of who Selena is, they kind of have this attitude of like, but you're supposed to be one of us.
Right.
And I think because of that, there was like this huge pushback against Selena, and yeah, she lost clients, she's lost income, um, and yeah, like some of those clients have said like really awful things to her. And then at the last night of funding for the first campaign was a really crazy night because we're kind of professional acquaintances with Peter Simeti,
Oh wow.
and that was the night that he got swatted.
Oh yeah. Gosh.
So we were like trying to write to him and getting in touch with him, and then at the same time, two friends of ours who like have been family friends for like over 10 years just kind of all at once were like, hey, this whole Comicsgate thing, we're out of your lives.
Oh wow.
So yeah, like we
And
try to
that
be decent.
and
We
that's
try to be
with it.
decent
That
people.
is with the no drama policy. You get
Yeah,
all that. Yeah.
yeah, like I was just gonna say, like we have a no drama policy, but it tends to creep up on us
Yeah.
sometimes.
Shoot. All right. Well, what I appreciate is like the weird thing for me is I was kind of like one of the early Comicsgate people, and then I just kind of like got tired of the drama, so I stopped
Yeah,
using the hashtag. But I kind of made the decision I'm not gonna like this is gonna be a free speech place, my channel. So
sure.
if someone comes out and says they're at Comicsgate, they have a place on my channel. I'm not going to make it exclusive to that because I want to promote indie comics, but I really appreciate that you were willing to take a stand for that. And I also appreciate the no drama policy because I feel like some people use Comicsgate as just like let's find out who to get mad at Twitter today, and you're focusing on just like making a book and chatting up your book and getting in touch with people. So I think you have the right focus, and I
Y-
appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like sure, there are people who monetize that stuff, and like some of it irks me and some of it I understand, especially when it's really lucrative for them. But yeah, like our whole thing is like, we made the conscious choice to get out of mainstream comics specifically to avoid nonsense like this.
Yeah,
Like I understand, and we went around and around with those friends who walked out on us. Like I understand what these people have against the idea of Comicsgate, but
yeah,
as someone who like knows all of the people within it and has been paying attention to it since day one, it's like just because you say the sky is orange, I'm not going to agree with you. Like I know too much of this stuff, and
yeah,
sure, there's been stuff that has been said that's unfortunate. But it's kind of like that whole thing that Joe Rogan says of, if you put 100 people in a room, like what are the chances that one of them is a complete idiot?
right.
It's pretty high. Like, but does that mean you burn the room down? Does that mean you all go to another room? Like, no, you just say, hey, that was a stupid thing you said.
Yeah,
So that, that's kind of the approach that we take to it.
good. Yeah, because that's the problem is you never want to get into like the trap of like, hey, you're responsible for every mean thing every troll on the internet has ever said to me, right? You've come out. Tell me a little bit about why you decided to sort of consciously leave mainstream comics because uh, on one hand I kind of get it, but I'd kind of like to hear it you explain it in your words.
Sure. What I've been saying to people, like I said this to Malin one of the times that we talked to him. There were a sequence of events that happened last year that kind of all pushed us in the direction of like, this just isn't working for us anymore. The first one was that meeting with IDW,
Yeah,
and like I'm sure you've heard like, they're their rates are pretty public knowledge at this point. Like there was talks of like maybe I could write like something turtle related for like $300 or $400, and it's like I'm gonna spend the better part of like 3 weeks writing this like 24 to 32 page script, and like I'm not even gonna be able to pay rent when I'm done with it. Like,
Yeah,
what sense does that make?
right. You want to be in the business of making money.
Right. And yeah, like Malin's response to that was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like the first words he should have said to you was like, hey, we're all in this to make the company the best that we can. So if you do your job, we'll do our job, and we'll get you a fair wage.
Yeah. They, they,
Um,
they, they kind of assume that you'll be thankful to work for pennies on the dollar, right?
exactly, exactly. So it was that, and it was the biggest one out of the few instances that happened was, we had just had our son, Clark, and I was watching Selena napping with him on the couch next to me, and I just had this moment of like, what are you doing? Like you're working as a freelance writer artist outside of the industry that you want to be in. And meanwhile, you're submitting books like once or twice a year to publishers that have no interest in you. Uh, Meanwhile, you could be building an audience between YouTube and Twitter, and fundraising through Indiegogo. So what are you doing?
So there's a chance the internet's provided you this opportunity to kind of like strike it out and just start making these things happen, right?
Right, which is what we struck out to do in the first place when we first moved out here.
This might be a bit touchy. Like I'm rooting for Samurai and Dinosaurs to get funded, but supposing you don't make funding, are
Sure.
you considering other publishing options? Because I want to read it. I really want to read it.
I want you to read it too, man. Well, like, okay, so first off, we have the option to extend if we don't hit our deadline by tomorrow.
Okay.
So we can go another 30 days, and everyone's convinced, like I was just talking to Edwin, and he was like, if you extend, you'll hit it. Um so if it comes down to it, we will extend, and I'm reasonably assured that we'll hit our deadline or goal.
Excellent. Yeah, because you're doing much better on this second round tour. And I'm glad you can get an extension. Like I'd want for you to like hit it before like the initial deadline, just win it all out. But at the rate you're going, I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it was, like the first time around, the first time around, it was, I take full responsibility. Like what happened was, I reached out to Sergio with the idea, and like the concept of like, hey, why don't I touch up some of the writing, and you go in and like touch up some of the panels that you weren't happy with, and like expand certain scenes here and there. Um, and he was like, I'm up for that, but all of 2019, I'm really booked up with projects. So it kind of has to be a now or never type thing.
Okay.
So that kind of lit the fire under me to like get it going ASAP. And, I should have done my research. I should have realized, hey, it's the middle of December. Nobody launches a campaign because everyone's getting ready for the holidays. So yeah, like we took our lumps. Like that first month of the first campaign, like we made nothing.
So and what's interesting about that is it's kind of a learning experience, like this funding side of it. Uh, yeah. So tell us some other things you've learned, kind of like from like your first attempt.
Sure. Um, well, the sweet spot, if there is such a thing, because I mean, look, the truth is, like if you're a Bill Tucci or like an Ethan, like you can launch a campaign whenever you want and people are going to back it. But if you kind of fall into like the middle tier or like lower tier, like new on the scene creators, the best time, in my opinion, to launch is between March to April, and the latest you can push that is like August or September.
Yeah.
Um, once you start getting into fall and winter, you're up against not only whoever else is running a campaign, but you're also running up against Halloween, Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
Christmas, Hanukkah. You know.
So you got to like kind of take into consideration people's natural shopping habits, uh, like after January, after February, like they've recovered from like Christmas, they can start shopping again, and like I don't know, people have said that that seems to be January and February seems to be like the lull when some of the bigger ones are doing. Can you confirm that, or does that sound like something familiar to you?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable. You know, like we our first campaign ended the first week of February, and you know, I considered just going right back into relaunching it, and a couple people behind the scenes were like, "No, you should wait till March."
Uh, trying to think. I'm almost done with our boy Wolverine here. So sorry, I was kind of like thinking I was getting into drawn mode a little
Yeah,
bit.
no, he looks great, man. That's amazing.
I want to get a little bit of shadow underneath this here to kind of like push that forward. All right, cool beans. I'm gonna check the live stream chat to see what people are saying. Take a short
Yeah,
break
go
from
for it.
drawing. Well, I'm stoked for Samurai and Dinosaurs. Have you considered Comixology or any like platforms like that? Comic Central is another good one.
Yeah, yeah. We and Indie Dave was telling me this a while back, and just how busy I've been, I still haven't taken care of it. We actually still do have the old version of Samurai and Dinosaurs up on Comixology.
Okay.
So we're familiar with the platform, but I don't know, man. Like, I'll be honest. Like, sure, my personal preference is for print. But if there was a huge market for digital, like we'd be all over it.
Yeah.
But our experience with digital has been like, it seemed like maybe 4 years ago digital was going to be the thing, and now there's just this feeling of like, just for the most part no one really cares. Like, on the manga side of things, you've got the Shonen Jump app, which is amazing
Yeah.
and is such a great value proposition. But I think until both big and small publishers are willing to adopt like a similar model to that, I don't think digital comics in America are going to take off the way publishers thought that they were going to.
Yeah, I mean, like I've bought digital comics, but for me, the only reason I really buy digital comics is so I can give away my physical comics and still go back and read it if I really, really want to. Like
Right.
100% of the time, I prefer to hold the thing in my hand while I read it. I don't. Someone asked, "Are there any female samurai on the team?"
Yeah, there are. Her name is Tokai, and she's kind of the closest that the group has to a ninja. She has a very mysterious background, and she's kind of the late eighth addition to the group, and no one really knows what to make of her. As a matter of fact, like, her very presence on the team is tied directly to kind of the big hook or the big twist of the story towards the end.
Ooh, okay, something
Yeah.
interesting going on. I got a request to draw a Zero from Mega Man X.
Oh, nice.
Any video game inspirations in kind of like from your childhood that have influenced you as an artist or a writer?
Well, yeah. You know, like, it's funny. Like, as a teen, like with film didn't really become like a huge part of my life until I was a teenager. But comics and video games were kind of those things that were like always there in my life. Like, I remember my dad, like, the Christmas that it launched, coming home with the original NES.
Oh wow, that
Yeah,
my older brother had one of those, so I played a little original NES when I was a kid.
yeah. No, man, I'm an old head. I was born in '81,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. So yeah, like, I think it's cool that, like, I'm a part of this generation that's like somewhere between Gen X and the millennials, where it's like we we've kind of grown up with video games always a part of our life.
Yeah.
But we were also there to see the start of it.
Huh.
So yeah, like video game knowledge and just like problem solving and thinking about, crafting narrative, like even, earlier you were asking me about team building and I equated it to like an RPG.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just video game logic, so to speak, is just kind of hardwired into my thinking.
Any experience with tabletop RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons, or mostly just like the JRPG kind of like console types?
Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, like basically from about like seventh grade up until like my freshman or sophomore year in high school, I was a big pen and paper guy,
Yeah.
or kid. um but then, it reached that point of like, okay, like especially, now that I've joined a band, like there's only so much free time I have, so it's either got to be the RPG stuff or the comics or the video games. So I kind of let the RPGs slide, but I still always paid attention to the industry.
Which
And
makes sense. Which makes sense because you got kind of got like you got to find time to do some professional things. You can't have all the hobbies in the world. Uh,
yeah,
but you did kind of like learn from that. Like, did you ever do like any DMing or make a campaign?
no, no, no. Like I would, the closest I got to DMing was like, like doing level editor stuff in certain video games. Like, do you remember Tenchu on the PS1?
Oh no, I didn't get that one. I
Oh
had a
man.
PS1. Okay, so I'm guessing it let you like design some stuff.
Yeah, it was a ninja game, and like I liked the core game, but like my jam was just like going in, and they had like a full level editor where you could just like grid by grid set up like an entire level and build it to exactly what you wanted it to be.
Wow, I think my brother played that, and was it rated M?
Yeah, oh yeah, it was.
I wasn't allowed to play that. Yeah, my brother got that. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the closest I would get to DMing was stuff like that where I'd like just go in and like create these little levels, or like, like stuff like in on a lower level, like the level editors in N plus, if you've ever played that.
Plus, I don't think I have. No.
Yeah, N plus is just this weird little 2D side scroller, but it's all like, Twitch gameplay, like run and jump stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, like the want has been there to DM, but I'd have to be able to find the time to get into RPGs again, period. And then like I that would be a huge time commitment because I'd be basically like writing out a whole other story on top of like all the other stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah, I gotcha. Uh, what? Trying to think of. I'm interested in maybe like what kind of future artistic projects you might have, like not just like comics projects you have planned, but will you be doing like any artwork in addition to the prequel comic for Samurai and Dinosaurs?
Um I don't I would like to say yes. But right now, especially because, kind of like what Ben is doing with Cautionary, like right now we're just trying to build our brand and get solid products out there in a timely fashion. I think for the immediate future, my focus is just going to be on writing miniseries and graphic novels that we can kind of turn out within the next like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah,
And I don't know, like maybe, maybe if we can build up a nest egg and I can get to the point where I can stop doing the freelance work. Yeah, maybe.
fantastic. So for you guys, like you've tested out like the mainstream industry. You've told the story of them saying we none of us are doing this to get rich, and you kind of like getting turned off by that. So for you, really supporting you is kind of like your chance to like make it happen, kind of like live the dream of being an artist, really, and support your family.
Yeah, yeah. Like we even say in the Indiegogo, I think somewhere under the main story part of it, like supporting Samurai and Dinosaurs isn't just getting you what we hope is, an enjoyable action-packed graphic novel. It's also helping us to build that nest egg and
Yeah.
helping us to get to that point where it's like, okay, I don't have to spend 40, 50 hours a week doing freelance writing and
Yeah.
illustration stuff.
Well, I really want you to get to that point.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
I think I've asked you like a lot of the questions I've thought of. So if you're cool, I just like to kind of like go into like kind of like casual chat mode. Is there anything you haven't told us about Samurai and Dinosaurs yet that you'd like to?
No, like those are the bullet points. Like again, like right now the main thing is hitting that main goal, but man, like we've got great stretch goals planned out if we can reach that point.
Yeah.
At 8,000, Francisco, the artist of the Good Night, he's going to be doing a custom bookmark for us,
Nice.
and at 12,000 is when we get to include that gallery. And oh well, okay, that's one other thing. At if we can manage to push it to 18,000, I'll be expanding the cabin from an ashcan sized book to a full 6.625 by 10.25 regular American comic book, and we'll be upping the page count to 24 pages.
Nice. Let me think. Oh, now that I know you're an artist, what kind of? I'd be interested in getting some artists together just for like some casual streams to like draw. Maybe like we'll have someone on who's got a project they're funding or a comic they're launching. What would be some fun ideas that you'd be interested in to like do drawing games in the future or drawing challenges?
Well, so Selena and I for the past month or so, we've been taking part in the draw at home thing for Drawn and Quartered.
Yeah,
So like the one that I kind of had the most fun with was this past week's challenge, which was reinterpreting a classic design.
yeah, and if
Uh,
especially if we're like celebrating like another artist like in the community, then we could maybe like make a theme of like I don't know, like redesign Wampool or something like that, right?
yeah, yeah. Like and I can't remember what show I said it on, but like that exact question came up of like which CG character would you redesign, and um like everyone unanimously agreed with me, like Cyberfrog, just because it's so complicated.
Yeah,
Like we gotta streamline that a little bit, Ethan.
right. He deserves a
Um,
little roasting.
yeah, but at the same time, like I get it. Like his design for Cyberfrog could be interpreted as too intense and too labor intensive, but it's that thing of like if you're willing to put in that labor and you know what you're doing, like you end up with an amazing illustration.
Right. And Ethan is a detail oriented artist, I've noticed. So for
Yeah,
him, that
it's
kind of makes sense.
man, those preview pages are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like I'm totally up for that. Like, as soon as be it tomorrow or at some point next month when we're done campaigning for this, just give me like a week or so and I'd be happy to start up something like that with you.
All right. Game night, drink and draw or something.
There you
But,
go.
and there's so many great artists too, right? Like that's part of the fun thing of it is, you know, it still kind of weirds me out that I've been on a live stream with Doug TenNapel, right? While
Right.
he's drawing like for his next independent comic project. Because I wasn't even an Earthworm Jim fan. I just found out about him through his comic book work years ago. So to me, that's kind of like it's a big deal. Like that some of these big name people are just hanging out on the internet and they'll come hang out on a channel and draw or something, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I was part of an auction last night because Mike S. Miller is at WonderCon, so Brian took over hosting duties, and by some twist of luck, I was invited in, and like just hanging out with like Elliot Fernandez and having Elliot Fernandez like, you know, do like a light critique on my art while at the
Yeah.
same time selling it. I was like, this is
Gosh.
nuts. What is even happening right now?
Any other big names you've met through comics internet that you kind of never thought you would meet?
Well, likewise, I've gotten to have a couple conversations with Doug, which is really surreal. Because you know, like I loved the hell out of Earthworm Jim when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's odd. Um, yeah, getting to talk with Ethan behind the scenes has been weird. Like I always had an appreciation for his work, but it wasn't until Green Lantern Rebirth that I really kind of connected with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you know, all the usual suspects. Like it's it's that thing of like what I hear people say all the time is um I think the mainstream industry is trying to react to what Comicsgate is
Hmm.
in the sense of like DC is starting to host like, you know, artists get together and draw streams.
Yeah.
But like they can't capture what we're doing because everyone on those streams is terrified to say the wrong thing to the wrong person.
Yep. You can't have like an easy like, hey everybody, let's make fun of each other night.
Right. Right, like Malin's whole thing of just trash talking everyone at the table, like that would never fly. So just by design, like you know, they can't be what is being accomplished with some of these shows that, you know, happen within the community.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about the internet, unless Article 13 breaks it all for us, is we
Oh,
still have some of this opportunity to just like relax, be free, roast one another. It's really like a big, beautiful free market, is what it is.
it's amazing. Like it, you know, it's this thing of like if you have a product and you have the ability to get it in front of enough eyes, you really can be, you know, a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Which you know, I think is part of the problem with the mainstream industry. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. Like you know, living here in Portland for as long as we've lived here, like we have acquaintances in mainstream comics,
Hmm.
and we're really close friends with a lot of people who run some of the oldest comic shops here in town.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want to see their businesses suffer.
Yeah.
You know, and like people have asked me like, well, since you're tied to Comicsgate, does that mean you don't care about comic shops? And it's like, well, I wouldn't say I don't care, but like I'm willing to help out comic shops on an individual basis.
Yeah.
Like if some shop in Ohio got in touch with me and was like, "Hey, can we do a bulk order of like 8 copies of Samurai and Dinosaurs?" Like, sure, I'll help them out because I want them to succeed. But the problem is when you filter that support for comic shops through Diamond, I don't think anyone comes out a winner.
Yep.
And
Oh, what do you think? What do you think about Alterna expanding to distribution?
I think it's great. You know, I'm biased because I think Peter's a great guy and he's been nothing but good to us for like 10 plus years now. But um, I think his printing partnership deal is great, and I'm happy that, you know, he's expanding his warehouse and distribution model. I think it's nothing but good, and I you know I is this a stream that like I can curse on, or should I keep it clean?
I try not to because like of the YouTube gods. Do
Okay.
you like your favorite G-rated substitution?
Yeah. You know, I always say like I go where the cool crap is, and I don't know, man. Like in terms of like mainstream comics, like Alterna is just cool. Like I look at a lot of the output from Marvel and DC and even like Image, and I just don't care about any of it. I think whatever it is, like Peter has his pulse on what's good these days.
Oh, it turns out I doxed myself, huh? Did you see that?
No, what happened?
People said my face, a little bit of my face showed up.
Uh-oh.
Now, how much of my face? Is this like a nose dox, or is this like a chin structure dox? Well, this is going to be a memorable stream for me. I'll be seeing photoshopped images of two square inches of my nose showing up on weird, creepy Twitter troll profiles. This one's for Carl's Amateur Hour. And so some of the other artists in the chat are interested in doing like artist hangouts too, like Jonah Arts. So, okay. I've talked about that with John Diller Gaming the System. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. I've just gotta like come up with some kind of like, I don't want to make it like too structured or people won't be able to like keep up. Like when I was an art tutor, like I'd have steps for everything, right? To like work the kids through like all the steps of it. But I think for like, adult artists, I'll just come up with something that's a little bit more general and fun that we can all do together. And then people can just kind of like show up and participate as long as they want. Okay, Carl's Amateur Hour says, my nose, hair, and eye. Three quarters of a face reveal. All right. Let's see here. I think that was the last drawing request I had from the chat. A reminder to the chat, would everybody in the chat please share the Indiegogo campaign, even if you can't afford to support it for now, and you could support it for $2. Come on. But even if you can't afford to support it for now, please share the Indiegogo campaign for Samurai and Dinosaurs and give this one a push, because this has been one of the most, it's such a great concept. It's one of the most unique artistic artist-writer combinations I've seen in a while. So let's see. Chibi Mike, I'd like to give you like a chance to give like an elevator pitch and a closing word on Samurai and Dinosaurs. And I'll just flip through some of our art for today.
You got it, man. Okay, so Samurai and Dinosaurs is about an elite group of samurai who are dispatched to investigate a downed meteorite on the Japanese countryside. What they discover along their way is time has begun to break down and fracture all around them. And the closer they get to their destination, dinosaurs begin to pour out from the Jurassic era into their time period. It's a revenge story. It's a science fiction story. It's a semi-period accurate historical drama. And there's bits of comedy and horror in there as well. It's got a bit of everything for like a PG-13 plus audience. And it's 110 pages of action for just $20. And we're somewhere around 30 hours to go with like 1,800 to raise yet. So I hope everyone listening will consider backing us. We'd love to have you as a customer.
Amen to that. I will be scanning these drawings. I'll be posting them, and I will be linking to the Indiegogo campaign for Samurai and Dinosaurs in the descriptions of these drawings. I think this is my favorite one of the night. Okay, what's this character's name again? Wolverine Samurai?
Oh, right. Kaigara.
Kaigara. All right. Kaigara. I like drawing Kaigara. I always like drawing a character because it's sort of like I get into their head as I do it. So now I'm extra interested to see his story and some of the stuff you hinted at.
Totally.
All right. My guest has been Chibi Mike, writer for Samurai and Dinosaurs. I'm really rooting for this campaign, and hopefully we'll have you back on again in the future for like an artist hangout.
Thanks so much, man. I'm looking forward to it, and it's always a pleasure.
And it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you, and thank you to the live stream chat. With that, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Hope you enjoyed the nose reveal, and I'll catch you later.